Hello, hello. This week I wanted to share my journeys about fighting against capitalism and colonialism. My personal journey of undoing that achiever productivity myth and mentality that I was born into growing up in America, especially. And I think so many of us grow up in this and don't think to question, is this really the way we want to live? Striving, workaholic, trying to keep up with the Joneses or keep up with other people, buying things that a lot of times we don't even really need. And it's hard to break out of it. It's all around us in the messages that we receive, the way people talk about their stuff, and the way that the media and advertisements also make us think, oh my gosh, our lives would be so much better with this extra thing, or they'd be incomplete without this. The hamster wheel just goes on and on and on. It is that hedonistic adaptation, if you've heard of that term, where you just get used to your lifestyle, or lifestyle inflation, where you just keep getting nicer things or upgrades without it significantly adding to your happiness or your comfort, especially beyond a certain point. And there have been multiple studies, and in the past they said the cutoff point was about a salary of $75,000 per year. Nowadays it may have changed, especially with inflation and the economy and a lot of other things. But I would say for each person, their particular set point is unique to them. And it always does involve some deep work diving into what truly matters to you, what truly fulfills you. And for me, I learned that, gosh, I actually don't need very much in my life to be happy, or to be satisfied, because for me, a lot of my fulfillment comes from connecting with nature or learning something new, exploring with a person in a deep conversation, or exploring concepts in books or courses or other ways, really expanding my knowledge of the world. And I was finding a lot of those, I don't need a fancy house or car or a lot of nice stuff to do that. And is it even worth it to slave away? Especially in my old job, being a doctor, it was really draining on me and my soul and my mental and my physical health. And the stuff that I can buy with it, is it really worth putting myself through that? I feel like so many people are workaholic, and the work is making them miserable, or perhaps that work lifestyle is making us miserable. And then we try to, in our free time, make up for it in some way, fulfilling it with other things that we use that money to buy, when really we could benefit more if we cut back on the hours, or change our careers, or make some other kind of change that would bring life into more balance, so that we're not always chasing and trying to fill up that depleted empty cup. And so there are so many ways to approach this, but I think the first step really is stepping back and getting out of that brainwashing even, and questioning, who created the 40-hour work week? Oh gosh, that was the Industrial Revolution. They just arbitrarily picked a number. Maybe humans weren't meant to work that much. Like, has that ever crossed anybody's mind? And it depends on the human. Some humans really do. They have more energy than others, or they work better with routine than others. Whereas other people, I found, if you're into human design, I'm a projector, and that means I work best in cycles or waves, honoring my natural energy cycles, and to not have the same routine every single day. So finding out what works best for you is really important to figure out what kind of life and lifestyle would actually be the most fulfilling for you. I think it's unfortunately been accepted as fact that the more productive you are, then the happier you should be, or perhaps that's just how other people view you. If they view you as a productive, contributing member of society through your work, or through the traditional ways, or through how much money you make, then that brings a sense of worthiness or fulfillment for you. But that leads people into tying themselves to their career or their identities, their careers becoming their entire identities, so heavily that a lot of them really struggle after retirement, or if something happens to them and they become disabled and not able to do the work that they used to do. There's so much danger to doing that. We are not one-dimensional at all. And I believe it's important to connect to all parts of who we are and our identities outside of what we can do for the world or for other people, and to develop all those different sides of us is part of the work of really loving and accepting and knowing yourself unconditionally, the kind of work that I guide my clients through. So going back to the hedonistic adaptation, they also did studies on lottery winners and actually people who became disabled, and found that after 2 years, they returned to the same baseline levels of happiness. So it really means that we humans are remarkably resilient, and that no matter what happens to us, good or bad, we will be okay. And a lot of things that we thought mattered a lot to us may not matter as much as we think. And so why are we killing ourselves sometimes for working so hard for this goal or the next thing, or to buy this other thing? I think that it invites us to pause and just consider that it's okay. We don't have to kill ourselves to get these things, that even if society tells us that we should do them. Who says? Why not decide for ourselves what we truly find rewarding and fulfilling and gratifying and meaningful to us? And why can't we accept that everyone has different tastes about this? That you don't all have to follow that milestones checklist or that cookie cutter blueprint of getting through life. Buy a house, have a family, save up however this much, buy a fancy car, all those things. It's for each of us individually to decide. So on that note, let's move on to career discussions. Finding a fulfilling career is perhaps a lifelong journey for many of us. I know for me, I've experimented a lot since finding out that medicine didn't feel quite right, like the right fit for me as my true calling, even though it was extremely, extremely hard to break out of that because it was so heavily steeped in my family's culture and expectations. You may have heard that joke that in many families, Asian families, for example, there are only 3 to 5 possible real career choices: doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant, programmer, maybe that's about it. They highly value jobs that are traditionally stable and highly paid. But that's not what's most important when it comes to our career satisfaction and our joy and us thriving as human beings. It can be if that's what you value, because many of us do. It's not a bad thing to value safety and security and abundance and having a certain lifestyle and freedom with that, if that's what matters to you. But for many of us, and for me, since I was always drawn to being a creative and an artist for as long as I could remember, the moment I became conscious, I was always drawing and creating. That's been a really, really difficult tension and ambivalence, a conflict to navigate in finding a career that honors that part of me, because it's not enough. I tried it. Trust me, I tried it for 30 years of my life to just do my art as a hobby in my free time. No, I was so exhausted from giving all of myself, or more than I had, to my career, that I didn't have anything left over when I got home. I was exhausted. I couldn't create. I just knew that sort of life wasn't sustainable for me. And my advice to you would be, it's okay to honor whatever you're feeling inside and to experiment, even if you just started off as a side hustle, if you have that energy. Bless you if you do. I know my energy was tough to do it that way. So I had to leave the day job or cut down to part-time or seasonal work in order to explore my yearnings and my soul's callings. But a lot of times you won't know just by thinking. I would recommend doing, to really get a feel for what that would be like in your day to day. Because a lot of times we can have this fantasy of what this certain career would be like, and then to do it and find out that it could be totally different. And that's okay. And it depends on the job too, or the career environment, or maybe you thrive best being your own boss as a self-employed freelancer or running your own business. There are really infinite, endless possibilities for you to try. You can certainly go through different career tests, career questionnaires. I can link some. It's just big picture questions. Like, it can find out, hey, am I introverted or extroverted? Do I like talking to people a lot each day? When I was working as a doctor, I talked to 25 patients in a day. That is meeting and greeting and getting to know 25 different people every day. Gosh, that was draining on me, as I realized later how much of an introvert I am. And it's not to say I like working totally by myself all the time, holed up trying to draw. I tried that out too and found that wasn't quite right either. I wanted something in between that was a mix of both. And I found that works really well for me is co-working with other people. So there is some of that socialization or collaborating. I really love collaborating with other people on some projects that we both align on. Just something that really gets you excited. Notice that. And you can ask yourself those big sweeping questions. Yes to people, no to people, somewhere in the middle. What kind of work do you like to do? Because, for example, medicine is quite like being a detective, just finding out information, extracting information efficiently so you can put it together and compare it with all your other things that you've learned to be like, okay, I think it's likely to be this, but it could also be this or other things. So it is like deductive reasoning, detective work, which I didn't mind, but I found that I thrived most when I got to just freely create. Of course, when I had inspiration, but I was finding that any form of creative expression through art, through writing, through making skits or videos with people, through having conversations, through hosting an event live, those things I got to use the more creative side of my brain, or the creative parts. And whereas my sister, who is in medicine now as well, says she really likes the deducing part and those deductions. And so knowing how you like to operate can really help with figuring out what kind of work do you thrive in? What kind of career would best support you doing that? And then even for something, deciding, do you want to be an employee working for someone else or working in a team? Or do you prefer working alone or being your own boss or calling all the shots? That's a big one too to consider. I wanted the freedom to do something and fully use my creativity and do things in my style. But I was also finding I don't like being in the spotlight or the limelight. Like, I would rather not be a solopreneur. I really like joining other organizations or co-founders or other people. That's just the model that I find makes me feel the most alive and gets me the most excited and motivated to do the kinds of work that I'm doing now. And so you finding out all those things can really help shape and help you sharpen and figure out what kind of career is best suited for you. And there are a lot. I think that it's also a myth and cultural brainwashing expectation that there is one perfect career for you, because I truly don't think so. You have a set of skills, you have a set of interests and passions and gifts, and it can manifest in so many ways. It can be expressed in so many ways, and finding that way can take a lifetime of experimentation too. So I know I've talked to people who are on their second career, their third careers, their fifth careers. It's okay to experiment and try things. And it is sad sometimes when certain employers or society make it harder for you to start over. If you are older, then they're ageist about it, or they look at your other experience and decide that's not relevant experience to what you're doing now. But just remember, a lot of skills are transferable. It's all about how you talk about your experiences, how you integrate them, how you apply them to your new field, and just forgiving yourself for experimentation and for trusting yourself and knowing that we're always changing too. So the kinds of things that most speak to us might also change as well, sometimes even drastically. And that's okay. Let's just roll with it and adapt to it as we go along. That's just part of life. I think I read that statistic where all your skin cells fully shed and you have totally new cells every 7 years. So that could be something that could also pay attention to on who is my new self. But every day things change and you are a new self. So allowing yourself that flexibility to explore would really help in discovering your life's purpose. That's the fourth thing that I would say to consider, just thinking about what really, if anything, it doesn't need to be something necessarily, but what bothers you in the world? What is something that you're just like, it would be so much better if this was fixed? Or that could give you a clue on what kind of causes that you want to stand for and fight for. And it doesn't need to be within your career. You can do it as in your free time, in your volunteer work, or just in the other aspects of your life. But that's something too that really, if you feel like you have a purpose that you really care about, or your organization is doing work that is making a difference in the world that really is really meaningful to you, that helps with fighting off career burnout and all of that as well. So just a couple tips about careers for this week's video.